Photos are an important component of any National Register nomination. A nomination will rely mostly on written information, but the visual components like photos and maps help to tell the story of a resource and demonstrate why it's significant. Photos document the condition of the resource at the time of listing and serve as a visual record for the future. They capture elements of a resource that go beyond the narrative description, and they help to highlight its important character-defining features. If you're writing a nomination as part of the federal historic tax credit application process, you might have already photographed the resource for your Part 1 application. National Register photo documentation differs in several ways from tax credit photo documentation. In general, you should plan to photograph the resource separately for your National Register nomination instead of using your Part 1 photos. Because the goal of the Part 1 application is to document every part of a building as thoroughly as possible, there will be more photos, usually quite a few more, for that application. National Register photo coverage is more concise and presentation-focused, with more attention on composition. Instead of documenting every wall of every room, here you're aiming for the highlights, as well as showing how the resource fits into its setting. Here are two examples of Part 1 photos that wouldn't usually be necessary for a nomination, unless they illustrate something important about that particular resource. The number of photos you take will vary by the type and size of the property. The goal is to give an overall sense of the resource and to document its important features as well as alterations that affect its integrity. This could mean 15 or so photos for a single building without many rooms, or as many as 50 for a large district. National Register guidelines call for unedited photos, so pay close attention to framing and lighting when you take your photos and check them as you go. Overcast days can be good for this type of coverage because the light is fairly even without harsh shadows. Avoid taking your photos in the middle of the day when the sun is high in the sky and strongest. On sunny days, late afternoon when the sun is lower in the sky is usually the best option. Also try to take your photos at a time of day when the primary elevation of the resource is not backlit by the sun. Photos should be clear, straight, and well composed. Use a standard focal length and avoid using a fisheye lens or panorama feature. While these capture more in a single image, they also create unwanted distortion. For nominations that include one or just a few components, each one will have more photo coverage. First, make sure to get one or a few photos of the resource or the small group overall, showing the setting and the relationship of the resources to one another and the surrounding features. Photograph all sides of each contributing resource from the outside. Try to get a whole elevation in a single photo, making sure all four corners are in the frame. This won't always be possible if resources are very close together or blocked by other objects like cars or trees. Do the best you can with permanent obstructions, and try to take your photos when there are few or no temporary obstructions like cars parked outside. Photographing the resource from an angle can also help with obstructions. Include any important features or details that aren't easily visible in the overall photos. If this is a building nominated for its architectural significance and the elaborate front door surround is an important component of it, get a closer photo showing that feature. Just as you'd do with the photo of the overall side of the building, make sure to get the whole feature in the frame. Inside, get one or two photos of each primary space and representative samples of similar secondary spaces. Again, the amount of coverage will depend on the size and number of spaces. Try to capture a whole space as best you can and show how spaces relate to one another to give your photos context. If there are any important features inside, make sure to capture them in your overall photos or in additional photos. Make sure architectural details are visible in your photos. Be careful about windows, which are easy to over or underexpose. It's fine to use a flash if you need to. You definitely want to include original features, but make sure to also capture alterations. Photos of these help the reader to understand them better and help National Register reviewers to evaluate the resource. Many small properties will also include non-contributing resources. These don't need to be documented as extensively as contributing ones. Include one or two photos of each non-contributing resource from the outside. Interior photos aren't necessary for these. Photo coverage for districts is a bit different. Because there are more individual components in a district, there will be less coverage of each one. You won't typically include any interior photos for a district unless it's a small one with important interiors. Districts should include photos that give a sense of the overall setting, streetscapes, and other major features, as well as a representative sampling of resources. When choosing which resources to photograph, keep in mind your Section 7 narrative. The narrative will include descriptions of common types and styles of resources and common alterations, including examples of alterations that do and do not render a building non-contributing. Use your photos to help illustrate these points by photographing examples of common types of resources, including unaltered and altered examples, as well as examples of non-contributing resources showing the different types of alterations you described. Also include one or a few examples of resources that are non-contributing due to age, especially if there are several of them in the district. To help connect your photos to the information in your nomination, include references to specific photos throughout your narrative description. With the description of each individual resource, include the range of photo numbers that include it. Also include references to the photos that illustrate specific points in your description, the common types, styles, and alterations. You'll also include a photo log in the nomination, including a brief description and the direction of the camera for each photo. Then you'll include a photo key on your sketch map. For each photo, include a number placed where the photographer was standing, with an arrow indicating the direction the camera was facing. Use any style of arrow you like, just make sure it's easily readable. Check the arrows against your photo log descriptions and the photos themselves to make sure the directions and the numbers all match. Photos are submitted separately from the nomination form in TIFF or RAW format at a resolution of at least 300 dpi. Contact National Register staff if you need help with this step. Make sure the file names match the guidance in the National Register Manual, including the state, parish, name of the resource, and 4-digit number, all separated by underscores. Start your numbering at 1. Remember, photos submitted in this format and included in your photo log and key are only current photos showing what the resource looks like now. If you want to use any historic photos or other images of the resource, you'll insert those directly into the nomination form and label them as figures. If you have any questions about photo requirements, feel free to contact National Register staff. We're glad to help. You can find our contact information on our website. You can also find most of this photo guidance, including more details, in our National Register Manual online.